The first season of Valhalla was one of the most surprising, amazing shows of last year. It was easily one of my favorites. I absolutely adore this world. I really, really love all these new characters, and I just love the whole, setting and vibe of this Viking universe. I just really, really love it. So let's discuss what happens in the first 4 episodes of Vikings Valhalla. So let's start with my favorite 2 characters, Harald and Leif. I love these 2 guys, and at first, Leif's going through a bit of a grief-stricken kind of mad Viking rage, and he's just bowing down people, making Legolas feel jealous, just killing everyone in sight. It's really fun on a visual level, but also really sad on a character level to see him just so crazy. And you get that sense of that father-like son that he was really afraid of in season 1. And it is just still so tragic that his girl died. When Leif died, and by Olaf, no less, I was just absolutely shocking. So it was really fun to see him kind of on the warpath at first. And then he gets a fun little reunion with Harald and Freya. They go on a little adventure together, but they are very quickly parted ways. And then for the rest of the episodes, Harald and Leif go on a little fun boys trip to the snow. One of my favorite aspects of season 1 was the budding friendship and growing friendship of Harald and Leif. I just really, really enjoyed it. And seeing them kind of buddy up together on a bit of a road trip thing was just really, really exciting. And then with the visual of the snow, that feeling of beyond the wall, I just really, really loved all of that. There's that moment when they arrive in town and it's just you couldn't find, because they've got their big longer hair, it's kind of all grown out, they haven't kind of pulled it back, they've just let it go to the sides and everything. Even though underneath it all they are still very attractive men, they look like hobos. They are the most attractive looking hobos you'll ever see. And I love it. It was so much fun. If anything, I wanted to spend a little bit more time with these guys, just kind of, being friends on the journey there. In one aspect, I love that Vikings Valhalla is so fast-paced, it's so frenetic. Season 1 was the same, something would happen, you'd be like, oh my god, Olaf won, he's the king of Kattegat, he's done this and this and this, oh, it's so clever. And then literally 3 seconds later, as he's cheering victory, he runs away and someone's taken over Kattegat. And it's just so fast-paced and frenetic and energetic, and I love that pace. It doesn't ever feel rushed, but then at times, with these guys, road trip through the snow, there are moments where I'm like, oh, I just love to see them palling about and doing more stuff. Because the stuff we do get to see is so much fun. They get into a bit of a wrestling / MMA fight, which is just awesome, so brutal and savage. I feel in season 1 they kept paying lip service to Leif having this kind of darker side to him, but until right at the end of the season where he's got the shirt off and he's just stabbing people and there's blood everywhere and the season ends with him screaming, until that moment we'd never seen it. So I really like that they just keep pushing the character and that he's not just kind of gotten over his girlfriend. Her death has just really broken him. He's just completely grief-stricken to the point where when they go into Rus, I think it is, and they're like, oh, what's this? And he's like, oh, that's opium. Let's just speak to the dead and just have a cool time and forget about all your troubles. I'm like, Harald, what? Were you on the same boat with Leif? Did you talk to him? Are you not aware that he is dealing with something and he is clearly not dealing with it, well? Don't tell him about opium. He's clearly gonna want to try opium. So he tries opium. He wants to see his girlfriend who is dead, and he sees her, but she just kind of leads him up onto a roof to die. And I really enjoyed the use of thunder and lightning and just the way it was really dark and then everything would light up. It was just a really cinematic, epic scene. I was afraid they were going to do something break one of his legs or do something like that was going to make him not be able to fight and do cool action set pieces and things, So I'm glad that they didn't go that route and he wasn't punished in that way. And it was more of just kind of a little bit of a wake-up call. Although I feel in ways, after that moment, his grief seems to kind of subsided. There's a lot of time jumping and time skipping that we keep seeing, his learning to read and Freya's pregnancy growing, and we're kind of skipping little moments and stuff, and I feel his grief after that point isn't addressed as kind of, prominently as maybe I kind of was hoping, because at first I'm like, oh, this is really cool, it's going to affect his whole season arc, but as soon as he meets young, sexy astrologist, I'm surprised she hasn't been hung for a witch, but I guess maybe these people are more accepting than other people in this time period. Lady character, he's like, actually, I'm all cool because she's pretty hot and I'm into this, what is this? A book? It's so easy to forget how caveman-y all these characters are because I feel they seem kind of sophisticated and they're always coming up with strategies in battle and, being really clever and outsmarting each other and doing all these things that make me forget that he's looking at this thing, he's like, what is this? This mystical thing that I've heard about? A book. And I'm just like, what do you mean? And she's talking about this and that, and she's like, look at this thing, it's called mathematics, and he's like, that sounds like the coolest thing in the world, is that a new language? And she's like, it's the greatest language. No, it's not. If you're considering that a language, it's the worst language. Like, if Leif went to high school now, he'd be the kind of guy who drops out of math the day you can. Like, at the end of year 10, he's like, I'm done. I'm not doing any more maths. I'm joining the football team. No, he'd have already joined the football team. But he's like, I'm continuing to join the football team. Although, maybe I am stereotyping his character because he loves to stabby stab and do a whole Viking thing because of the time period in the Vikings. But he does seem very interested in the kind of scholarly things, like a reading, like a math. And he starts to learn, and I didn't realize how much time had passed on the boat until he was suddenly saying like full sentences. We never even got a scene, and this is with that time jumping and kind of skipping over. And I feel like I felt it more this season than last, at least for the first half. I haven't seen the second half yet. But I feel like there are moments where I'm like, I would have liked to see him being like, and kind of stumbling over his words and like doing very basic kind of words and English and stuff like that. And I just think that would have been really interesting. Similar or exactly the same as how Davos did with Shireen in Game of Thrones. Like, there were scenes and moments with him doing like really basic stuff and stumbling over really simple words and not understanding like silent letters and things like that you just kind of take for granted. And you go, oh, okay, so he's at level 4, like a 4-year-old. Oh, now he's like a 10-year-old. And I just think that would have been really fun to see the character kind of go through those scenes, and it would have made us kind of enjoy these two characters together, who are clearly going to have a bit of sexy chemistry later on. But at this point, it just feels like a bit surface level, because that first scene where she's like, it's a meteor and it's a rock and this and that, and they fall from the sky, and Leif's just like, what the hell? This lady's crazy. She's got some crazy ideas. But he's kind of really fascinated by it all and by her, and that start was really good. And then I feel like once they got into the boat trip, it was kind of like, and I know there's going to be more episodes and it'll keep advancing, because he's already saying really big words like juxtaposition or benevolent or a third example. I only know 2 examples because in my lit class, literature in high school, they were like, just use the word benevolent and juxtaposition like once every paragraph and you'll get an A. And I did. And I did not get an A. I've loved Harold's quest to go and get an army and try and do anything he can do, get into fights and to earn money and, to reinvent himself and all this stuff. I really love that moment where they're like, how are we going to do this boat thing? And he's like, boat on a sled with horses? It's like, I love it. Vikings did this a lot as well, where they just come up with really fun, ingenious ways to, navigate the land or to raid or to do this. And it's always really, really fun. And this was no exception. And so on this voyage with them, they've got a slave owner. They've got a rich man with a slave who's definitely his son or daughter, and it turns out I was right, it's his daughter. Twist, shock, oh! I did like, though, that it was like he was afraid that she was gonna, like traveling as a girl. So he was like, oh, I'll make it like my boy slave, and no one will touch my slave. But it just seemed really obvious, just from the get-go, and then that whole interaction with the slave owner, which was like, I see what's gonna happen here, but whatever, it is what it is. And then we've got a bunch of other people, and the one thing you need on any voyage that may or may not be a little bit mystical in a bit of a far-fetched, fantastical, fantasy, medieval, story, the blind navigator. Oh, I love it when there's a bit of a daredevil-like character who's just like, I can't see, but I can see with my other senses, and they're heightened, and I'm just really good at everything, even though it just wouldn't work. He'd just be so useless. He's like, it's a lefty. They're like, bro, no, it's alright. You've misremembered, actually. I'm so sorry to tell you. Alright, so that's enough talk about the boys' trip. What about Freya? Last season, Freya's plot was the most spiritual and mystical and kind of, dealing with all those religious themes, so heavily. And this season, it's no different. So much so that when she goes to the new Uppsala, Jomsburg, when she, enters there and everyone's looking at her, it reminded me exactly of Neo entering Zion. Everyone's just like, oh, the best. And she's like, maybe I am the best. And I found that really, really fun. And it was kind of interesting. It was like, oh, so we're just going to get a new Uppsala and everything's great and dandy and fine. And then, almost immediately, I'm like, that, surely not. Everyone seems so happy. They've even cast King Arthur from Merlin as the new sexy hero leader of this place. And everything just seems fine and dandy. And then, the first scene in the temple, the lady doesn't walk in. And she's like, oh, no, I don't step foot in here. Only the pure step foot in the temple. And it's just, pure is not the word that you really want to hear if you've joined a new religion or a new sect of your religion and they're just talking about purity, and it's like, oh no, I might have joined an extremist cult. And she did. It's just so funny though, because it's like the way it just cuts straight to this place where we thought it's like, oh, everyone's got to help out. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Everyone's got to do their part. But as soon as we cut there, it looks like a prison encampment and they look like slaves. They don't look like workers. And it just looks awful, just the way it's been presented. And it's like, oh, so it's not going to be a will they, won't they? Oh, sorry, no, is it not like bad or good? It's just like, oh no, this is really, really bad. And she has joined a cult that's going to take everything too far, and they're talking about purity and all this bad stuff, and then it just escalates and escalates with the little girl and the training, and they send her off to do the mission. There was also one note I had with like she goes to get the bone or whatever, and you got to do this trek, and you've got to do it by yourself to earn the respect of everybody. So the little girl goes and does it, and she gets like the thing, and she's got a little scratch. She probably would have been able to make it back on her own and figured out how to, tear off some clothes and, make the bandages and get home, and they would have all respected her. Although I suppose, like, big King Arthur, but now I'm a Viking, wouldn't have respected her, because obviously at the end of episode 4, he kills everybody, which happened way earlier than I thought it would happen. But I just feel like before that, you didn't know that they were going to get murdered and that they're actually like proper psycho, like, 10 out of 10 psycho. So I just feel like it just seemed like they were kind of a bit unwilling. So if she'd come back on her own to get this, I just feel like, I don't know, it was just weird that Freya was like, I'll help you, because it's like, did anyone else get help when they got theirs? Isn't the point you're trying to like prove yourself and do it yourself? It's just weird because like in season 1 when she has the battle to prove that she can be a shield maiden by beating the other shield maidens, it's like if Leif had stepped in and helped her, it should have been like, no, don't help me. I have to do this on my own. So that just seems like a little bit of a weird of a character moment. And I understand she wants to save the child, but also that child seemed like a proper badass. Like I felt like she could do it. So why didn't Freya like go, oh, that sucks, she's gone, but oh, I'll pray to the gods that she will come back and everything will be a-okay. Speaking of praying, I love, and they did it in season 1 as well, I love how there'll be a scene where it's like, oh no, the ships haven't come back, oh no, they're totally dead, let's sacrifice a ghost, let's sacrifice a person, let's just kill a bunch of stuff in sacrifice. And then just due to, random unrelated circumstance, the people come back and survive, and it just strengthens, their faith. And I just love how the show plays with that in so many different ways. It's just really, really fascinating. I am really enjoying this kind of extremist cult version of Freya's religion, the pagan Viking whole thingy. Just really enjoying that. Really shocked that they all got killed, and that's what we end episode 4 on. I think it was a big kind of horrifying moments. A cheeky little red wedding halfway through the show, but more of like an appetizer version of the red wedding. The red wedding is like all 3 courses. This was just a little appetizer, but before the 3 main courses, because I didn't really care about any of these characters. No one died. They went, oh, they died. It was just more of a big shocking moment, and I just love that King Arthur from Merlin, a show in which I have inexplicably watched every single episode of for the whole show. Kind of love it. It's so cheesy and dumb, but I love it. And he's great in it, but it's really great to see him as a villain, as a villainous character. But there is a moment where he goes like to like pull a bow, like threatening, and it reminds me of when someone has like a fake gun and they like put the gun to someone's head and they're like, bang. Imagine if that was a real gun. But with the bow, it just, maybe it's his acting, maybe he's gonna be a bad villain. I don't know. We'll see. I'm very excited to see what comes next. Also, I love that intro to the pirate ships where it's just all in smoke. And Leif, who is like a Greenlander and this amazing kind of sailor. His main thing in that first couple of episodes was how good he was at sailing. And he's like, no one sails in these seas. And they're like, yeah, so it's season 2, so we have to be even better. And so we can. We're better sailors. We're pirates. And then the big fireballs come, which was so cool. Until they hit the sand, and I guess just they didn't have the budget to have real fire on the sand, or they tried and they went, oh, a big fire hits the sand. It doesn't explode like that, but I presume it was just a budget thing. But that CGI fire looks terrible. Whatever, it is what it is, but I like that in theory and in essence, because they're all surrounded and you're like, oh, the pirates are coming. And then the pirates are like, fireballs! And I'm like, whoa, I did not see that coming. In the original Vikings TV series, I always felt like England, when the Vikings weren't there, either invading or, Ragnar was there discussing things and trying to make things work. And when they weren't kind of actively involved in the English stuff, it was always kind of the weakest element of the series. And I kind of feel like that's the same now. Like, I really like all the characters, but I am really missing Budget Joffrey. I think he was a really, really great character. I really liked Edmund. Edmund? Yeah, I think that's his name. I really, really liked him. I really liked him with Budget Littlefinger and the Queen, Budget Cersei. I was really enjoying all of these characters kind of interacting, the way it was building. I loved Canute being there. I'm really missing budget Joffrey and King Canute this season. And I don't know where King Canute is. It feels like Denmark is the place they send characters to be like spun off into like another series almost, where they're like, they're off in Denmark and we're not going to show Denmark even though we are globetrotting to every character. If you go to Denmark for that war, we're saving that for a third series and he will not be back. It's like, is that actor coming back? He's not been in a single episode since he left and his father came. And even Forkbeard hasn't been in this season that much, which it's fine, it is what it is. But this season in England, we are mostly doing some Ramsay Bolton style torture. Just a whole lot of torture. It is pretty upsetting, to be honest. I really don't like torture scenes. At first, I really didn't like the idea of giving Godwin, our budget Littlefinger character, kind of more like empathy and, you know, a bit of like an extra layer of character to him, because he was just such a dog and such a Littlefinger last season. Just like doing that trip rope thing to kill the king, I just found so dogsy. I was just like, that's brutal, bro. So I don't really have any sympathy towards him. So all the emotional stuff where he's like, I actually love this girl, it's so good. But then when it turns out that her brother was the poisoner, or the, you know, would-be poisoner, I actually found it really interesting, because I was like, I don't know if she is actually with her brother or if he's using her brother to dog her and use her as a scapegoat. And I just didn't know where the allegiance of anybody lied. And I think season 1 did such a good like way of just doing so many twists and turns and betrayals and, you know, just doing so many different things that it's like really hard to track who's going to do what. But it never feels like super out of left field, because everyone's just trying to do their best to stay one foot on top of another person. And I'm always like, by the end of the twists and turns, I go, I understand like the decisions of the characters, but I'm still unsure where they're going to go each time, because there are so many different ways to kind of betray someone, and then it's a double betray. It's you know, it was never a betray, and just all these kind of things going on, which I just find really, really exciting. So by the last couple of episodes, I was back on board with the England plots. But just too much torture. Stop doing torture. But that's their thing, right? That's like, how else are you going to get information? Torture. Jack Bauer would be very proud. I know this is just a practical thing to kind of keep the story streamlined and moving and, you know, no boring, slow kind of nothing scenes, but it's so funny to me that as soon as they put the body up in the street that's hanging, like a second later, his sister walks past and screams and totally gives away the game that she knows him. Like, just immediately, like, that plan was super effective. So our final storyline centers around Olaf. We get him already stuck in the cage, captured by Forkbeard, and he's naked and he's beaten, and you kind of think maybe there's going to be this big kind of, you know, hanging scene, this big execution kind of to start the season off and to have a big shocking main character death. But no, Forkbeard has a better idea. And by better, I mean an insane and ridiculous and stupid idea. It's just, I don't understand what it is with this family being like, I have taken over this place and you're my enemy. So actually, do you want to rule? And I'm going to go do this other thing. Like, the father said last season that Canute has got too many hot plates going in the kitchen and he can't, you know, cook and make the meal all come together at the end like his mum used to. And it's a really good metaphor, because that's exactly what happens. But the King Forkbeard is also falling into that trap where it's like, you belittled Olaf and you treated him like such garbage, and you think that just because he got his son, he's not going to betray you. And I know that he loves his son. He clearly loves his son. But I feel like Olaf is not the type of person that you put in charge and then like have him with the new king, training him and bonding with him. It just seems like a dangerous plan, a terribly dangerous, dumb plan. And so far it seems to be going very well for Olaf. Like, he's having sex with the sexy queen, whose name I cannot remember, but the original Canute's queen. And now he's like, seems to be kind of really bonding with the kid. He's like, kill this man, execute this man with a sword. And the kid's like, okay. And he's like, don't use a sword, use an axe in training. And the kid's like, okay. Classic bonding scenes. He's the surrogate father he never had, or did have, but just a new one that's present right now, and they seem to be having a grand old time, and it's all a bit of fun, and nothing really has happened yet. I feel like I'm enjoying him more as a character in like the likable sense this season. In season 1, he was just kind of the crazy, angry, you know, murderous man who was just super, super religious in like the bad way, and I didn't really like him as a character. Like, I liked him, like watching him, but I didn't like his like personality, I suppose. Whereas now he seems to be kind of warming up a bit and being more like fun for a Viking, I suppose. But he's always going to be opposed to Harald, and Harald is my favorite. It's like Olaf's always going to be the villain. It kind of feels like they're falling into that same thing Vikings did with the two brothers, but I always hated Ragnar's brother. Like, from the start, I hated that guy. I don't like his face. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment below. I'd love to know what everyone thought of the first 4 episodes of Vikings Valhalla Season 2.